We're now joined on tonight's broadcast by Porsche factory driver and defending GTLM champion of the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, Lawrence Vanthoor. Lawrence, welcome to the broadcast, and hope you're doing well this evening.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, we had a lot of fun with Earl a few weeks ago. He was on and talked a little bit about how sim racing had affected his career, supplements his career as a real life driver. And as I think back on what he told us, the biggest thing that he emphasized was how much training you all did, especially in Weissach, getting time in the sim and training more of the computer programs than the technology behind your factory 911s. What sort of work do you do with the factory team, and is it more focused on the car, like Earl said, as opposed to maybe learning some of the circuits?
Well, there's two ways of looking at it. One is the work we do with Porsche and Weissach. It's getting actually more and more now. Pretty much before every event, or especially the big events, we have a simulator session, so I call it, in Weissach, where we have this huge simulator, complete room, 3-4 people working full time on it, I think, and prepare the race as far and as good as we can. Obviously, there is still limitations to what you can do and what doesn't yet make sense with the technology what exists today. It's important for everybody to understand that, because sometimes people working on it get carried away. But there, it's a bit from our job to say, look, this is too early. This is not reality. This makes no sense yet. But other things do a lot, like systems and fuel saving, aerodynamic configurations. All those kind of things are small details which we can prepare in the simulator together with Porsche. And then there's the other aspect, which is, I think, a bit more privately. Like you could see in the corner of my sim here in my office, is to learn the tracks and to keep busy and train, especially in the winter or in this period. You can train your concentration and your focus and stay in that rhythm. It's obviously still not real life, that I think everybody knows, but it's the closest to what we can do. And then there's another thing, which is sim racing, but that's a whole other story.
You bring up a very interesting point that I think, when you reflect on it, does carry a lot of weight and truth to it. That there's a separation now, especially as the technology is developed, between what you find with the work and what you do in Visoc, and then what you do at home. So it sort of sounds like, just based off what you said, that there are almost two mindsets that you carry, depending on whether or not you're working with the factory simulator or whether or not you're just running at home. Is that true? And can you explain the differences between the two?
Yeah, actually, it's pretty much, actually, because especially in now, this last couple of weeks, where Porsche wants us to do more esport racing, like IMSA, the IMSA series or Super Cup series. I'm getting more into depth with online racing, let's say, here at home. But it's very different to what we do in Weissach with Porsche, because what we do there is we try to drive how we drive in real life, how we drive the car when we would be really in it and really driving, and working on setup in that way and developing in that way. Whereas now, and that's what I'm learning now the hard way by starting with it late, the sim racing thing, you're learning how to race on the simulator. You're doing things which often or sometimes some things in real life you would never get away with. It wouldn't work. But it's tricks. Like there's tricks in every car to go quick. There's tricks on a simulator to go quick, which don't necessarily line up in that case, because you're looking at the gray zones of the game and what the simulator is doing, what the car model is doing, how close it is in real life. You're doing the same thing. You're trying to get the maximum out of it to go quick as possible. But if you go that deep, it goes a bit of a different route. And yeah, that's that's why, if, like for me now to start esports, I'm learning those things, and it's not always very easy, but it's definitely a challenge.
You touch on another very good point. I remember in one of the broadcasts here in America, the NASCAR champion Joey Logano talked about the difficulties of getting used to the sim, especially with the lack of feel, as he described. You don't necessarily have the motions and the forces that normally would indicate to you that the rear end is stepping out from underneath you, or you're struggling with understeer, oversteer, that all those cues in a simulation are visual. So how has the learning curve been just getting used to those cues in particular and to the differences and the little tweaks in sim racing that make you quick as opposed to little bits and pieces that you use to make yourself faster in real life?
It's not very easy, I must admit. It's actually difficult because there is that factor where, real life, like you call it, you have the butt feeling, what your car is doing below you, and that's probably the biggest indication. I'd say in my case, which you can feel the car and react to what it's doing. Now, obviously, that's not there, so you need to rely on other input on your eyes visually, seeing what's doing, on your ears, on the simulator. The tire sound often says a lot, to listen what's if that's indicating something, and your steering feeling. You have to try and get that same senses out of different areas, which you're basically kind of learning how to do it all over again. It's not very easy, and that makes it a bit tough to learn, for real drivers who are stepping in and not have been doing this for years. And the other thing is, in real life, often you get normally what, 1, 2, 3 hours of practice, and then you go in and you start driving. Where here, practice is basically unlimited. And I know the real hardcore sim races, they start at 7 in the morning and they stop at 10 in the evening, and that's a lot of practice, and that's not easy to spend that many time. I'm trying to catch up to be good, but if you do that 3 days, you're like, okay, now I don't want to I don't want to step in that room anymore for the next 2 days. So it's definitely different, and we're used of driving, and driving to be most of the time quick and competitive, and then you're to get your ass kicked by by other sim racers or other drivers. Sometimes frustrating, but it's part of the learning process, I think.
I think it goes back to the principle that you see most often, I think, with blind people or deaf people, where obviously you lose one of your five senses, but at the same time, most of those people find ways to develop the other four that they have so that they all end up being stronger. Given that when you race in a sim and that sense of feel is taken away from you, it in theory should heighten your ability to lean on both your ears and what you hear and then what you see to make your skills and your senses as a driver better. Do you feel like there's something in the idea of sim racing, maybe training your eyes and your ears better so that when you get back to real life racing, that you end up with a more complete skill set on that front and you aren't necessarily just completely relying on that butt feel, as you said, to figure out what the car is doing?
It's actually a point which I've asked myself as well, which, to be honest, I could see as a potential benefit. It's difficult to judge right now. We'll know that in X amount of time when I'm back in the car. But that definitely could be. You're developing, and trying to work on other things and other experiences. So you're learning new things, and there are probably a couple of things which you can carry over. But you need to be smart as well. You can't carry everything over from sim racing because, like I said, we're learning things now which are specific to the sim, and then you need to be smart and know what you can take over and what not. I think it's more of the senses, which you can take over, but pure driving style, that's too specific to real life. That would be not a good idea, I think, to keep that in the brain. But there's definitely plus points, I think. I hope, hope there's some positive as well to do on real life. Spend all these hours in the sim. So, but I'll be able to tell you in a couple of weeks. Right.
Off
That
go
was
the
my
AirPods. They fly
earplug.
away. Fair enough. Now, obviously, there's the feel aspect of sim racing that we've talked a little bit about. There's also the circuit learning that I think is a very big piece of it as well. And now that you've had some experience as a Porsche factory driver for a few years, I suppose it might not be as big, but when you think back to 2017 in particular, first year as a factory driver, and all the exposure to the new circuits that you had in that season, how much was sim racing useful and helpful, and did you lean on it to learn some of the new circuits that you got the chance to race in that year and in that point in your career?
Yeah, I definitely did. I think I'd say back then that for me was the most important aspect of having that simulator here at home to learn those tracks. Because 2017 I didn't know any of them. I was completely new as well to IMSA. Um, so that helped me a lot. And now I'm learning further prospects about sim racing. But definitely that's for us one of the key preparations which we do. It's even if it's not gonna change your weekend, but it's gonna help you. If I do a sim and I prepare a bit and get my brain going in that circle and getting those reference points and those feelings left, right, it saves you 10-20 minutes of first free practice to get into a rhythm. Maybe depends on how good you know that track. But if that's something which you can achieve by doing that, well, that's a no-brainer. You do it.
You get ahead of the curve and save yourself a little bit more time at the circuit.
Yeah.
Of course, there's circuit learning. There's also car learning as well. And for everyone in the PCA, they compete with all kinds of Porsches in iRacing. They've competed with the GTLM 911. They've competed with the GT3 Cup car, and in the fall they'll compete with the Cayman GT4. So, can you speak to your experiences in whatever way, shape, or form on how those cars behave in the sim and how they compare to the way those cars drive in real life?
A bit difficult to say for two of them, but the RSR obviously I know really well, and I'm using it on the simulator, and it's very close, to be honest. Obviously, there's still minor details to real life which are hard to get away, but it's very close, and I feel familiar very familiar when I drive it on iRacing. So it's a feeling which I know and feels familiar. So I think that's a very positive sign in terms of saying that it's realistic. The problem with the Cup car and the GT4 car, I've actually never driven them in real life. So I was not one of the typical Porsche juniors who came up the ranks. I came from another brand. I've never raced in the Cup car, and I've actually been wanting to try it, but it simply there wasn't any time up to now and any chance, nor for the GT4 car. So I've got that experience first in iRacing. Maybe I should give our boss another call to to let me give a try to at least be able to speak about that. But from what I hear from Nick Tandy, who's driving it a lot and knows the Cup car very well, he said it's as hard to drive as it's in real life. So that's a positive sign.
I think that lines up with what a lot of people have said that the GT3 Cup car in particular is one where it isn't the easiest to learn, and it definitely takes a bit to get used to it. But a few cars in iRacing are more rewarding to get right once you really know how to get the speed out of it. And then the
I agree.
GT4, you figure it's just you throw it around all over the place because there's absolutely no downforce and not much
Mm.
grip. But you've got a durable chassis that can be sort of willed in those ways, shapes, or forms. So I guess as you have a little bit more time here in the sim, do you have any sort of goals that you want to accomplish before we get back to real life racing and things that you want to try, you want to learn while we're all here at home?
Um, it's it's been a give and take. I would, this IMSA series and the Super Cup series, especially IMSA, is taken very seriously by Porsche and by the eSport division. we've actually the race is on Thursday, and we've been practicing since last week Monday. Nick, Tandy, and Guven, myself. So pretty much all our focus is going towards that, because the eSport division, they badly want to beat the BMWs, who's been successful, and they don't like to see that. So we're training a lot and working a lot on setups and strategy and details, like almost like in real life, pretty much. So it's sometimes more of a job than real, just doing it for fun. Um, my goal, I think, for when it's over, is to get better at it, to get quicker. I am progressing, but obviously, it's not something which happens overnight, especially when everybody's unlimited time practice. And I was thinking about it before. I would love to do some fun series as well. It's just I don't know, an all-star series with NASCAR stars, IndyCar stars, IMSA stars, and I don't know, 5, 6 races, a NASCAR race, an IndyCar race, a an IMSA race, a dirt race, whatever, and every time just half an hour before the race, announce which track and which car it will be. So nobody has time to practice and to do setup, and you have an hour of practice and you go, and then it's just really fun, and it's drivers competing against each other and going for it without spending hours and hours of preparation. And it would be a heck of a show, I think. Who knows, maybe somebody comes up with that idea. That would be, I think, a really fun show aspect of it.
The Lawrence Vanthoor Invitational, I think. Yeah, I know of a few drivers who have come up with ideas like that. I know American Landon Castle, who races in NASCAR, took those Cup cars to the oval at Monza and turned damage off entirely on Easter Sunday. And you can imagine what kind of madhouse that was. But there is something, I think, to be said about how, you know, drivers, and I think what you just said is a perfect example of it, that yes, obviously there are the bits and pieces that you have to tackle as part of your job with whoever your employer is, but at the end of the day, there's still the love of racing there that we're all drawn to, and ultimately, I think that's what we come back to in sim racing, and I think it sounds like what you come back to as well. That at the end of the day, it's about having fun and enjoying it, right?
Yeah, I know, and that's my personal opinion, and I think obviously, and that's what always happens. IMSA series, there's brands now competing in it, like real life, because everybody's sitting at home basically. So, and that's what happens in real life. BMW is winning, so obviously Porsche wants to do better, so they're going to put more effort in it, more training, more resource, and then tomorrow maybe Corvette wants to join, and we want to beat Porsche and BMW, so they're going to do more, and then it's starting to become a serious business again. Whereas, and that's my very personal opinion, without having to represent a brand or win, is I think my opinion, we're doing this most of the time, mostly as well as a show for the fans to watch us on TV and or live streams and so ever. That's the main thing. I don't think I don't know. It's not. It's very close, but it's not a real life IMSA series. So I would like to do some more fun, pure fun races from time to time to put on a great show like that NASCAR thing. But I get that we also need to take it seriously and represent Porsche and beat all the others. So I think it's good to try and have a good mix of both. But yeah, like you say, there is a part which is a job which we have to do and basically listen to what they want us to do, and there's a part where we can have fun.
And ultimately about finding the balance between the two, which I feel like is a general life principle that we come back to a lot as well.
Yeah.
Lawrence, thank you so much for your time, and hope that you get the chance to have a little bit more fun. And best of luck, of course, when we get back to real life racing.
Thank you very much.